If you know the Crosiers for any length of time, you're going to hear this word, decade of transformation. The decade of transformation was connected with the celebration of the Crosier Jubilee. We celebrated our 800th Jubilee in the year 2010, and we celebrated that all over the world. And we counted this as the conclusion of a decade of preparation, of spiritual preparation for our Jubilee. And that 10 years prior to the Jubilee in 2010 would have taken us to the turn of the millennium, the year 2000. There was a gathering of especially younger Crosiers in Bandung in the year of 2000 to talk about the Crosier charism. And one of the significant components of the Crosier charism was the dimension of living in community, living community life. And in part, our order had become more dispersed and in some ways identified with the ministries of individual Crosiers, particularly the priests, in parishes, in school ministry settings, in hospitals. In the end, it looked like we shared a common conviction, a common spirituality, but we actually did not live in community. We did not live directly in community. So this group of young Crosiers who was meeting in the year 2000 put together a series of recommendations that they presented to the Master General and his council and said, we need to work at these decidedly, decisively, and deliberately to make some changes. And the kind of changes we were looking for were not incremental changes, not cosmetic changes, but a transformation of the way we were actually forming ourselves, living together or living separately, and to make that transformation a real transformation toward our Crosier charism. And the Master General and his council at that time decided in favor of the recommendations that they received from this study group, and they termed the work that we were going to do over the decade of transformation. They named three significant values, three transformative values that would make us authentically Crosier, that would make us new in mind and heart. So they named as the very first transformative value that Crosiers will actually live together. And so that our communities would actually become places where we gathered, where we lived together, where we created fraternity and mutual love for one another in a common place. The second transformative value was that we would choose ministries, as our Constitution said, we would choose ministries for the church, for the society, that foster community or are in some ways springing forth from community, so that we would choose communal apostolates that really relied on this central value of community life as one of the important dimensions of our charism. And the third transformative value was in some ways more spiritual rather than communal or apostolic, and it related to the contemplative dimension of our lives. That we in some ways had become too activist, too ready to spring forth to do many things without having grounding in our religious conviction, in our faith, in our connection to God in prayer. And so this third transformative value was to renew our contemplative spirit, to renew our contemplative ability and our contemplative identity as Crosiers. In the year 2010, when we celebrated the Jubilee, we looked back at what had happened in the course of this 10-year period, and we noticed that we had done a great deal to actually claim those values in reality, and not just as ideals, not just as hopes, not just as dreams, but we had made significant movement to live together as brothers, to create within that community of life a new energy for apostolic presence and apostolic service, and that through our prayer, particularly our liturgical prayer, we found again our deepest roots in the God who guides us, in the God who calls us, and the God who sends us. It was a wonderful decade to participate in. It was a wonderful grace to our order, and we think it was a wonderful grace to the Church to be able to reclaim those central Crosier religious values.